Hey, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. I want to briefly comment on Michael Knowles' video. Did the Pope bless same-sex couples? I like Michael Knowles. I mean, I like the Daily Wire as a whole. I mean, sometimes they have stuff that I don't think is accurate or I don't agree with. And, sometimes I see from the Daily Wire guys, especially the Catholics, sometimes I see them buying into, some of the misinformation that's out there, but I don't really blame them given that you'd kind of have to, your niche would kind of have to be researching theological issues and stuff like that. And so I don't really fault them for missing the mark on the death penalty or the Tridentine liturgy or something like that. I totally can sympathize with people who their area of focus is elsewhere, and so they're going to be vulnerable to some of the misinformation that's out there. And I get it. So I don't always agree, but on the whole, I like the Daily Wire. I don't care what y'all say. I like it, even though sometimes, like I said, there's some issues. Every now and then, I hear Ben Shapiro say things that he shouldn't say, especially about the Pope. But Michael knows. I think he's a good guy. I think he's one of the good guys, right? I think he's sincere, honest, and wants to do right. And I just wanted to offer a couple points where I think maybe he's missing the mark on his take about same-sex couples, and I can get it and be sympathetic for people who, again, it's not their area to go and just dive through a bunch of magisterial documents. It's just not their thing. They have other issues that they're addressing, and okay, I totally get that. And what are people like that to make of all of the chaos that's going on and has erupted in the church? So I want to offer a little bit of guidance here. He takes a much more moderate and balanced take than most have already. So already I got to give him credit. He's done way better in the position he's adopted than 90% of the Catholics that I've seen out there. So already we're in the right direction. We're in the ballpark. But I want to tweak some things here. His position overall seems to be, I'm happy to be corrected, but his position seems to be that no, the Vatican has not approved of blessing gay unions. It has made quite a few distinctions, but then you have people like Father James Martin who are trying to, celebrate this as a victory for his position. And so he asked the question, like, what are we to make of this? And then his perspective is, well, you're to make of it whatever you want. There is an ambiguity here, and in fact, a weaponized ambiguity. And that's where I want to say, no. We missed it. We missed it. We're right whenever we say that the document did not affirm blessing same-sex unions. That is correct. I've done multiple videos demonstrating that already. But what's not correct is that the document itself is ambiguous or has weaponized ambiguity, or the document could somehow be exploited for ambiguity. No, not at all. And as I've pointed out before, in the case of someone like Father Martin, well, what gives license to them to feel like they can celebrate a victory? The same Father James Martin who has been twisting sacred scripture for years now. He's been twisting scripture. Why would it be any different when it comes to the magisterium? The fact that he twists scripture, again, I assume unintentionally. I'm not judging his intentions here. I'm just judging the net result of what he's doing. It's a twisting of scripture. He's been doing that for years. And does that somehow mean that there's ambiguity in scripture? Of course not. Of course not. People haven't been abusing the words of Jesus for 2,000 years and have created entire denominations and sometimes even cults on the words of Jesus. That doesn't mean Jesus was ambiguous. It just means that there are people out there who twist things. And so, unfortunately, Father Martin has been twisting scripture for years. Why would you expect him to be any different when it comes to the magisterium? I mean, he's twisted the magisterium up into the present too, even prior to this document. We shouldn't be surprised. But just because he twists it doesn't mean that there's something in the document that allows for twisting. There isn't. The document is so abundantly clear. The document is so not ambiguous that I'm actually pretty proud of the document. I looked at the document, read it multiple times, and I thought, wow, this does really well in guarding against ambiguities. And I appreciate that because I can't stand ambiguities. I'm a theologian. I like to be very precise, very careful in the way that I formulate doctrine. I'm one who greatly appreciates distinctions and nuance, which is why I like St. Thomas Aquinas. He's the master of distinctions and nuance, as I've pointed out. If you've ever read the Summa, I mean, this guy can make a nuance on some subtlety of, a letter in a word, and then write about it page after page after page, and it's actually meaningful and not something that is, mere sophistry or something like that. I appreciate nuance. I appreciate distinction. I appreciate being precise. And the document was that. It definitely sufficiently guards against abuses. The problem is, in so many cases, people abuse things without even going to the document. I'll tell you this, there's a reason why you won't see somebody like Father James Martin open up the document and read it line by line and explain it line by line. There's a reason why you won't see him do that. I've done that. I do that all the time with every magisterial document that I comment on. I do it, and I do it right in front of y'all live, and we go over the document. There's a reason why your Father James Martins won't do that. Because simply speaking, the document doesn't support his position. So let's briefly take a look at the introduction here from Michael Knowles, because it's in the introduction that you'll just kind of get a synopsis of his perspective. So I just wanted to briefly interact with it. Let's go ahead and begin it.
Did the Pope give his blessing to same-sex relationships yesterday, as the media breathlessly reported? No, not quite, but I understand why you might think so. In a new document for the Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith, formerly known as the Holy Office, formerly known as the Inquisition, the Church has declared that priests can give same-sex couples a, quote, spontaneous blessing, but not a blessing that is, quote, liturgical or resembles marriage. No, quote, clothes, gestures, or words that are proper to a wedding can be included so as to, quote, avoid any form of confusion or scandal. The blessings cannot be connected in any way to civil unions and, quote, rites and prayers that could create confusion between what constitutes a marriage, which is the exclusive, stable, and indissoluble union between a man and a woman, naturally open to the generation of children. So,
what did he miss there? Did you catch it? If you don't know the answer to what I'm about to say when I ask the question, what did he miss? If you don't know, you're not in a position to comment on the document. What did he miss? It should be jumping out at you. Incredibly, outrageously conspicuous. What did he miss from the document that excludes any liberal exploitations or even fake traditionalist exploitations of the document? Give y'all a second to think here. Again, if you don't know the answer, that's fine. That's cool. I don't expect everybody to know everything. Nobody knows everything. But reserve judgment and don't make judgments and comments about something that you don't know about if you don't know the answer to my question. What did he miss? Should be jumping out at you. Okay, well, let's start with the fact that one of the things that he missed was paragraph 5, that is explicit in reaffirming the 2021 decision of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, now the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, which says the union cannot be blessed. The union can't be blessed. That completely, 100% destroys any liberal exploitation that will present the document as saying that the union of the couple is blessed. The object of the blessing in the document over and over and over is the people of the union, the people of the couple, but not the union itself. So a couple asks for a blessing. They are the subject requesting a blessing. The object of the blessing is the people of the union, the individuals, the persons, the people. but not the union itself. That's explicitly stated in the document. So there is no weaponized ambiguity. There's no lack of clarity. What it is we're not sufficiently familiar with what the document says. Plus, the document builds on previous documents, such as the 2021 document. It's not that unless something is explicitly reasserted in a new document, previous things are now null and void. No, they build on previous things. And in the 2021 document, it explicitly notes that, homosexual acts are sinful and God cannot bless sin. And this particular document that the magisterium released builds on that, even though it still reiterates those points. I'll bring that out. Another thing, again, relevant to what I'm saying here, that should be jumping out at you is the document itself notes that the only sexual act that is morally licit is the sexual act between a man and a woman in a marriage open to life. It's explicitly clear on that. So everything else that deviates from that is morally illicit, i.e., sinful. And of course, another thing that is brought out very manifestly in the document is the blessing is not an approval, but rather the blessing is an invocation for God's help to live a holier life. Those are some important parts that we're missing at the outset here, that would exclude any kind of ambiguity. And that would exclude the positions of like your Father James Martin and would not allow him to run a victory lap. So it's a little comical to watch some of these people running their victory lap while incredibly conspicuously ignoring what the document actually says. Okay, so let's watch the rest here.
Oh, no. The church did not approve the blessing of same-sex unions. Exactly. And yet, some liberal priests, including one media-savvy Jesuit in particular, who's inordinately obsessed with weird sex stuff, has celebrated the document.
He's referring to Father James Martin.
As, quote, a major step forward, and mocked the notion advocated by conservatives that nothing had changed. So what does this mean? It means, I'm sorry to say, just about whatever you want it to mean. It means that the Vatican has not officially approved blessings for same-sex unions, as many are reporting, but it also means something else. Something that affects not just Catholics, not just professing Christians broadly, but everyone. It means, this is why I even bring up the story, it means that weaponized ambiguity will cause scandal. Because clarity is charity and confusion is not.
But the document is clear. What is not clear is the commentators commenting on the document creating confusion and creating an artificial scandal. The document is clear, therefore it is charitable. What is not charitable and not clear are the commenters. They're the ones creating a scandal. So there's no weaponized ambiguity in the document. Again, I've done an entire stream going through the document line by line, and a subsequent stream earlier today engaging a lot of the responses and engaging the common areas where people are attempting to exploit the document. And I just show, wait, hold on. It's very clear. If you just look at the context, you can't exploit the document like this. I could twist Jesus's words like that too. I can twist your words. I don't care who you are watching this video. I could take anything you say and I can twist it and run with it and take it right out of context and have you saying the most wild things conceivable. Perhaps I should have been an attorney. I could have you saying all sorts of wild things and you'll just sit there and wonder, wait, hold on, that's not the context of my statement. But, if we're just ignoring context, I make you say anything. I make Jesus say anything. I make the Bible say anything. I make the church say anything. But if we consider words in their context, that's when we have to say, oh, okay, no, I can't import any meaning that I want whatsoever into these words. I have to interpret them in the context. And if you do so in the context, it's abundantly clear what is and what is not allowed. And you're welcome to go and watch those videos that I've done. I'll put them in the show notes. So while I totally appreciate Michael Knowles and others who want to be much more balanced than the wild stuff that we're seeing out there in media, whether secular or even Catholic, he's taken a much more balanced approach, much more level-headed approach. We're still missing the mark, though. If we think that the document is what is ambiguous and that the document is creating scandal because of ambiguity, if that's what you think, it is because you are not familiar with the document itself, because that cannot be substantiated from the document itself. And I challenge anybody to show otherwise. If you can claim that this is ambiguous, you're going to have to do the same thing with the Bible, because in many parts of the Bible, it is much less specific and offers much less explanation on a great deal of areas of theology that are incredibly crucial and important. Just consider the in-depth theological debates on the two wills of Jesus, two natures of Jesus. Consider in-depth debates on the filioque. Consider in-depth discussions and debates on justification. I think that Scripture is sufficiently clear on all these points, but it's a lot less specific and explicit on some of these points than the document we would just receive from the magisterium. So if you somehow try to think that, hey, this thing is ambiguous, I mean, what do you do with the tensions that we find in sacred Scripture? If you're generous in interpreting those things and you give a lot of leniency there, I certainly think you should be doing the exact same thing with the magisterium, even though that's not necessary here, because I don't know, the magisterial document here is surprisingly very clear. And I was, a little concerned that maybe there would be some kind of ambiguities in here. No. And if there was an intention for ambiguity, you wouldn't have things in there where it talks about how, these blessings can never be done in conjunction with a civil union or in relation to them in any way. They can't be wearing any kind of tuxedos or, stuff like that. I mean, it goes at length to qualify all of this. So I'm not buying the ambiguity card, and I'm not buying all of the people in the comment section that are gaslighting people trying to say, oh, the document is once again unclear. Pope Francis is once again unclear. No, it's the critics that are unclear. It's the critics that are causing the scandal. It's the critics that cause the confusion, not the document. Any confusion you may find in the document is 1% of the lack of clarity compared to the 99% created by commentators, even Catholic commentators, who the vast majority of them are not theologians. The vast majority of them do not know about the magisterium or its intricacies or how it works, and therefore are unqualified to even comment on the issues. What's unfortunate is a lot of the talking heads, a lot of the content creators, this is not their area of expertise, if they even have one. Some of them don't. But for those who have areas of expertise, this is not it. So it would be like me coming here on YouTube and giving you a diagnosis of, a person's mental health difficulties, or some kind of commentary on a brain surgery. I don't know what I'm talking about in those areas, and you'll never catch me talking about them because I don't even know the basics of human anatomy when it comes to these discussions, let alone do I know of all of the intricacies and, of a surgery involving matters of this sort. So you'll never catch me commenting on those things. So likewise, I mean, you have these other people out there who this is not their area, the magisterium, or even just theology in general. It's not their area. They have zero formal education and any even informal or supplemental education. Nothing that would really allow them to speak in any kind of informed way about these things. We get a bunch of these guys showing up on YouTube, creating a lot of confusion. We even get priests who are way outside of their area, canon lawyers who don't even do a good job at canon law, frankly, in some cases. Y'all know who I'm talking about. And then definitely are pretty poor when it comes to theology, and certainly are not very helpful when it comes to commenting on church politics. So you find all these other people out there who are commenting on this stuff, even clergy, and you think, goodness, you're way out of your wheelhouse. This is not your thing. But for the average person, they're perceived as authorities. Let me give you an example of this. Although this one is much more understandable compared to the stuff that we see. Dr. Bart Ehrman, the atheist, right? I've interviewed him here on the show before. His area of expertise is a very, very nuanced part of New Testament textual criticism, right? His dissertation, very, very specific, very nuanced. Okay. That's his area of expertise. Everything else, and he might have some proficiency there, but it's not his area of expertise. But he will comment on those things, and he'll often be perceived as an expert in those areas. He might comment on religion, and he might have some competency there, but it's certainly not something that is his expertise, like Christian theology or something like that. But he'll be perceived as an expert in Christian theology in some contexts. And no, that's not the case. Any professional theologian could certainly point that out pretty easily. So what often happens is you have some of these people who are authorities in one area, but then they're perceived as authorities in other areas. And when they comment on those other areas, people think that they're qualified to comment on them. In many cases, they're not. Now, I just give you an example of Bart Ehrman, who actually is an authority in a particular area and does have proficiencies outside of that area. In reality, a lot of these content creators don't have any expertise or even just proficiencies in the areas that they're commenting on. And that's unfortunate because it often gives people the impression that somehow their opinion matters. And their opinion is very little different than me walking to a local bodega, even though we don't have bodegas here in Louisiana. I'm thinking of New York. I don't know. I use bodega, the local supermarket here, right? Just a random place. I just walk up and ask a random guy, "Hey, what do you think about the church's new document on gay blessings?" You might as well just ask a random person on the street compared to some of these commenters and content creators. It's almost a joke. And when they're commenting on them, they're often doing so in a very informed way. And that creates a great deal of chaos and confusion. And now add to that the secular media, where a lot of those journalists don't know anything about theology. And so they're just going to come with wild perspectives and interpretations. Some of them don't have any kind of morality that would say, hey, you want to be sure to be accurate in your representation here of what the church teaches. There might be a deficiency there morally. And in some cases, being a journalist doesn't really prepare you to analyze magisterial documents. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. It's not. It's not their area. Perhaps they would do better interviewing people who that's their expertise, but often they'll just kind of give their own commentary. And that creates a great deal of confusion. So when you have the secular authority or the secular media, I should say, and then Catholic media often butchering what the church has actually said, it can give the average person the impression that, hey, well, maybe the Pope isn't clear. Maybe the church isn't clear. Maybe there's some ambiguity there. No. And the whole notion of weaponized ambiguity, frankly, if I recall correctly, the first time that we really see this is in relation to the SSPX debate, and is based on a fallacious and outrageously twisted story about Skilovics at the Second Vatican Council. And it wasn't even Skilovics who was promoting such a notion. He was actually horrified by somebody else who was talking about it. Somebody else who was not in a position to indulge in or insert any ambiguities in the Second Vatican Council. In fact, I have a whole show exploring that whole point. So this notion of weaponized ambiguity, I don't really find it very helpful. If anything, what is happening here with weaponized ambiguity is the critics of the magisterium, the critics, whether they identify as Catholic or not, they often exploit their own ambiguities. I'll give you a perfect example how they create ambiguity. They say things like, Pope endorses blessing for same-sex couples. Okay. And now, does not section 3 of the document, is it not titled blessings for people in irregular unions and same-sex couples? Well, there you go, right? And they will extrapolate from that the union of the couple is what is the object of the blessing. Whereas if you just read the context, that is excluded. That is not the proper interpretation. What it's saying is the couple is requesting this, and the object of the blessing is the persons of the union, not the union itself. But they won't give you that detail. They won't explain that to you. They won't qualify it. They'll just relish in this ambiguity, in their ambiguous phraseology. And they'll allow you as the reader or viewer to extrapolate from that your worst nightmares and your greatest fears. And they exploit that. So who's really causing the ambiguity here? The magisterium or the critics of the magisterium? I can show you time after time after time. It is the critics of the magisterium, 99% of the time, who are creating ambiguities. Let me grab this super chat here. Thank you so much, Truth Brigade. It's a super sticker. Really appreciate that. And also, Truth, thank you for gifting those 5 memberships. Thank you so much. Well, I have plenty more videos coming out, plenty more reviews, a lot more content, both related to this subject and other subjects that have nothing to do with church politics. Plenty more to come, but I wanted to sneak this one in. If you found it helpful, hit that subscribe button. Help me grow Reason and Theology so I can reach more people with this content that you love here at Reason and Theology. If you love this content, you find it helpful, please help me reach new people who haven't heard of the channel and haven't heard the other side of the story to all this fake news out there. Certainly consider doing that and also checking me out at patreon.com/Reason and Theology if you want to get access to extra content and support the channel here. Because it's frankly you guys who keep the lights on. You guys are what keeps the channel going. So please consider supporting me there. There's also a GoFundMe and PayPal link there in the show notes if you would rather use those instead of Patreon. And yeah, I have plenty of other things out there. MaximusInstitute.com, where I have my course on the magisterium. For those of y'all who are new to the channel, the magisterium is my area of expertise. So I address all of these questions related to the magisterium with any kind of magisterial document. I go through it, I explain it, also show the viewer in the course how to read magisterial documents, ascertain whether or not they are authentic magisterium, what level of the magisterium, that is how authoritative they are. Is it definitive? Is it non-definitive? Various levels of assent that are owed to magisterial propositions, distinguishing between documents versus propositions, all sorts of things. The biblical roots of the magisterium, I mean, you name it, I cover it in the Understanding the Magisterium course at MaximusInstitute.com. You can certainly check that out. And I'm going to have plenty more coming out on the magisterium, so stay tuned for that. And I have a whole playlist right now with hundreds of videos on the magisterium and how it works, available for free for anybody who wants to go and get it. If you can't purchase that course, that's fine. I got plenty of free content on the magisterium for you in the magisterium playlist. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Thank you for the super chat here. Avi Crux Spez Unica. Pseudo-trads now confused how you can bless people and send pseudo-trads on July 4th. God bless America. Well, yeah. I mean, the document itself notes precedents for this, right? Liturgical precedents, biblical precedents. There's all kinds of surprising precedents that I've brought up. I've had some priests mention to me about how even in the confessional, if you have a penitent who's not actually contrite, So they're not really sincere in in their sins, being sorry for their sins. Instead of granting them absolution, instead you grant them a blessing. Mhm. Yep. And so the object of a blessing, uh, when it comes to a simple blessing, such as the one that's being discussed in the document, and that is in this particular context, not a validation of the person's actions, but rather a blessing as an invocation for God's assistance to live a holier life. The object of such blessings really is any any person, really. Um, it can be anybody. It doesn't really even require a certain level of contrition or conformity to God's will, because the idea is that the blessing assists them in becoming more conformed to God's will. So the blessing is for anyone. That's why anybody, whether they're living in sin or not, can walk up to, even if they're not disposed to receive the Eucharist. Let's say they are in mortal sin. Even a person in mortal sin can walk up to the priest during the liturgy and receive a blessing. There, right there is liturgical precedence for this, even though the document itself, by the magisterium, is specifically talking about a non-liturgical blessing. So it cannot be done liturgically, because that would cause confusion. A scandal in the document is clear. We must avoid that. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful. Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, share this on your social media with people that are confused and that you feel would benefit from this. Okay, see y'all soon with some more content. God bless.
Are you confused about how Catholic teaching authority works? With encyclicals, papal bulls, councils, and many other things, it's easy to get confused on what is authoritative and what is not. Fortunately, at MaximusInstitute.com, I have prepared a course explaining the magisterium from A to Z. Visit the website and check out the course Understanding the Magisterium for more information.
Are you a Catholic thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? Or are you a Protestant discerning whether or not to become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy, and engages all of the arguments that Eastern Orthodox use against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them. I show that they are in error, and in fact, they're inconsistent, because the things that Orthodox are objecting to are in fact found in their own tradition. So the fullness of the faith can only be found in the Catholic Church. Check out the book right now at shop.catholic.com for your copy today.